Live from the Business RadioX studio in Atlanta, it's time for Dental Business Radio, brought to you by Practice Quotient. Practice Quotient bridges the gap between the provider and payer communities. Now here's your host, Patrick O'Rourke.
Hi there, friends and family of the dental business community. This is Patrick O'Rourke, your host of Dental Business Radio. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'd also like to thank our sponsors, Practice Quotient, professional PPO analysis, negotiation, and strategic guidance. If you are a top-tier provider and you feel like you are not getting compensated appropriate to your training and expertise and competitive advantages in the market, then you may want to consult with the fine professionals at Practice Quotient. That's www.practicequotient.com or 470-592-1680 or info@practicequotient.com. Practice Quotient. It's like intelligence quotient, but Practice Quotient. I thought it was clever. My wife thinks it's silly, but there you go. If you hit me up on Instagram, if you tell me if you don't like the name. Anyway, I'd also like to thank Mark Johnson. Mark Johnson is here all the way from St. Louis. Do people in St. Louis get upset if you say St. Louis?
No, they like it. That's fine. Perfectly fine. Thanks for having me on the show today, Patrick.
It is my pleasure. So, Mark, you do something that's very interesting. You come from the finance world. I have a wee bit of experience in there. And one of the things that has been shocking to me to learn, or not shocking, like, totally, but definitely problematic, the size of the loans that these kids have to take out to go to dental school and come out. I hear it a lot that they get out and then they don't realize that they are now $500,000 or more in debt. And, they're trying to buy a practice, and sometimes the bank will give them loans. Sometimes they don't, but it's not like they went to business school either. And so when I was approached with your, how you were kind of tackling this, it made me curious. And so, with that preface, can you just tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and your mission here?
Sure. Thank you. So, I grew up in the investment industry. I've been in the investment industry about 30 years. And 7 years ago, I ran into an opportunity to give an investment presentation to a group of orthodontic residents here at, we'll say, St. Louis University for you. And there was about 45 in the class, and about 15 were getting ready to graduate from residency. And a few of them after the presentation said, "Hey, we'd like to talk to you about investing after residency, but did you know that we're graduating with," one had $400,000 in student loan debt, and one of them had $750,000 in student loan debt. And I said, "Are you kidding me? I had no idea you could even get that much in student loans to go to a graduate level program." So I started asking some questions because I'm a curious guy. So, tell me a little bit about the resources available to help you figure out how to pay this off. Does the financial aid office at the school, provide some resources? Has there been any other financial advisor come through, buy you pizza, teach you how to do this? And they said, "No, we're left up to our own to kind of figure this out." And I was like, "Well, that's strange." As you know, Patrick, there's a financial advisor for every finance topic under the sun, right? And I said, so there certainly must be somebody out there that's focused on student loan repayment. So I said, let me see if I can find someone for you. And I poked around and I couldn't find anyone. And so that was the genesis of StudentLoansRx. And so I'm a wealth advisor with RBF Wealth Advisors here in St. Louis. And I started StudentLoansRx 7 years ago to help. Initially, my focus was on the dental space, and that's still probably 80% of our clients that come through StudentLoansRx are in the dental space. But we also help out some MDs and some pharmacists and a few veterinarians, because really anything at that graduate level in the healthcare space, they're coming out of school oftentimes with $250,000. And I have one client that he's an endodontist and he's got $1 million in student loan debt.
Was his books more expensive?
I think he lived on one of the coasts, and got a family going. I think early in his even in dental school, and so he just needed more loans. I mean, one of the things that's changed here in the last decade or so, and I don't exactly remember when it changed. It was before my time in working with student loans, but up until let's say fairly recently, the last 10 years or so, you could only take out loans for tuition and books. But now, in the last decade or so, you've been able to take out tuition for living expenses. So if you live in, Iowa City and you're taking out living expenses, your loans are going to look a lot different than you're living in Boston or LA, right? And so the kids that go to school on the coast come out with, tremendous amounts of student loan debt, and someone in, like I said, Iowa City, University of Iowa, or University of Missouri, Kansas City, public schools in the Midwest, they're coming out with oftentimes half as much in student loan debt.
Mm-hmm. All right. That does make sense. So it's not the books that are expensive. It's the living, the housing. That's interesting. So as they have all of this debt, nobody's talking to them about what they can do to pay it down. Is the interest rate manageable?
Well, so since March 13th of 2020, President Trump, since we've been in COVID, so coming up on 2 years now, actually interest accrual and payments have been stopped. So most all federal student loans have been in forbearance because of COVID. President Biden has extended the forbearance. And so for 2 years, there has been no interest accrual or payments. Now, the average person graduating this year is from dental school. The interest rate on their federal student loans is in that 6.25% to 6.5% range. Again, that's been turned off for 2 years. But on May 1st, supposedly payments are supposed to resume and interest starts accruing again. So if you got $300,000, the average dentist graduates with around $300,000 or so in student loan debt. So $300,000 at 6%, just for simple math, that's $18,000 a year in interest alone. And so someone graduating with $300,000 in May or June this year has pretty much had $36,000 of, let's say forgiveness, if you will, because there's been no interest accrual the last 2 years on their loans.
Yeah, I see. So hopefully those of you out there in listener land that have been working in the past 2 years were using that as an opportunity to pay down your loan and not trade stocks on Robinhood. That's Pat talking, not the wealth manager talking. I do not have a license, so I don't have anything to disclose. My opinion is not a substitute for qualified licensed counsel, licensed to practice anything in your state. Legal disclaimer. So you started talking to these kids about it, and so I'm a little surprised about the whole forbearance thing. They're like, all right, so you don't have to pay any of your loans back.
Didn't they turn your mortgage off too for the last 2 years?
No.
Oh, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
No, that would have been nice, right?
Yeah. I mean, they're like, oh, I don't know. There's no. Yeah. Why would I? Even if they did, like, if they said you don't have to pay, why would I want to not pay?
Right. No, I was just being facetious.
Yeah. And
no, they really, it's been a great benefit. I mean, now one can argue whether 6.5% is too high or too low or whatever for loans.
Who's holding these loans? Is it all the Fed?
It's all Oh yeah. I mean, that's low. If they were to go out and get a private loan, their first year in dental school, they'd have to probably get a cosigner. Well, 90% of the time they'd have to get a cosigner, and the rates would be much higher and probably variable. So yeah, I mean, given the other opportunities out there for credit to go to dental school, going to the financial aid office in the school is really the only way you're going to finance a dental degree, unless you got unless your parents can help you out, or you got a rich uncle or something,
Yeah, rich Uncle John Ray. Can't use food stamps, John Ray. Anyways, so when these kids come out, then so you're going to talk to them. Now, I've been to dental schools before. None in Missouri or Kansas City. But I was like, hey, and I was explaining like PPOs and credentialing, and they were all looking at me like I slipped into Portuguese. And, I was talking to them. And so I'm like, there's nobody gave you any business. There's been no business people in here. And they're like, And I was like, all right. So I was there for a while, and they all seemed very appreciative, but I really felt like I was throwing a pebble into the ocean. So
some of the schools, have like what's called like a practice management club, and there's
a club like a glee club.
Similar, no singing, I don't think, but similar. And they have guest speakers come in to talk about various aspects of practice management and stuff like that. And there are some schools that offer some, a course or two, as I understand it, on practice management. We have a dental school here in St. Louis, and I know a handful of the faculty member there, and they do have some practice management classes. But it's there's a lot to learn in dental school. I'm not a dentist, but as I understand, these are really sharp young professionals, and they've got a lot to learn, and they're not really. Yeah, they're not. I wouldn't say they're prepared in dental school to be a practice owner. That would be for sure. And so, I think most of them, you're not going to be able to go out and buy a practice immediately out of dental school. I know one lender that will take a look at you after you have 6 months of production. So most first-year dentists are going to, become an associate somewhere for a couple of years. And what I try to do is, when I visit the dental schools or get a referral to someone who wants to be a practice owner, we try to put together a plan if it's within their wheelhouse of saying, my personal opinion as a wealth advisor is if you want to be a practice owner, I'd like to help you be in a position to do that 24 to 36 months out of school. Now, if you want to do that earlier, then that's fantastic. But most lenders want you to have somewhere between 5 and 10% liquidity in order to give you a loan. So it's going to be very difficult for someone coming right out of dental school. Let's say if they want to buy Dr. Smith's practice and it's $1 million, they're going to have $50,000 or $100,000 of liquidity. Well, the average dental student's not going to have that, 6 months out of dental school. So we try to help them. We put together comprehensive financial plans. So first thing I do is I review their employment agreement, make sure they're optimizing their benefits wherever they go to work. So if it has a 401k and health insurance and all those things, then we start putting together a budget for them, help them put together a budget, income, expenses, what's left over for discretionary savings and spending, saving and investments. I'm sorry. And then if you want to be a practice owner in 24 to 36 months, how do we set aside a bucket of money so that when you walk into the bank and say, hey, here I am, I want to buy Dr. Smith's practice, I need $1 million, that they're in a position to do that. And the banker doesn't tell them, well, you need to do this, this, and this, come back and see me in a year or a year and a half. So, 50-60% of dental students, based on my experience, want to become practice owners. At least when I go in and buy them lunch and I ask the question, how many of you want to be practice owners one day? At least half of the hands or more go up. So the reason I really like dentistry is it's one of those last healthcare professions that's still very, very entrepreneurial if you want to go down that road.
I concur with that. Now, when these kids are getting out of school, where are they going? Because I heard health insurance benefits now, generally speaking, that's only going to be in companies of 50 plus employees.
Sure. So I don't have exactly the stats, but they're going in.
We can just make shit up on the show. It's okay.
Okay. All right. Well, you don't have a compliance office, but I do. No. But
I'm just kidding, compliance people. We do not make stuff up at all. It's a total joke. Okay. Have a sense of humor, compliance folks. We love you.
No. Yeah. They keep us out of jail. That's good. So I say that there's 4 tracks when somebody comes out of dental school. They're either going to residency, right? They're going to become an associate either in a private practice or a dental service organization. They're going to go into public health, so be an associate in a public health clinic, or they're going to go into the military. So those are kind of the 4 tracks that dental students take. And so based on each of those 4 tracks, there's some nuances to the planning that we put together. So for example, somebody's going into public health, chances are they're going to have health insurance. They're going to have a robust benefit package. If somebody goes to work for one of the larger DSOs, and there's, a number of them, let's say Heartland Dental, Aspen Dental, Pacific Dental, one of the big dentals, right? They're going to have a robust benefit package, 401k plan, health insurance, probably some group disability insurance. They'll even give them a little bit of employer paid life insurance. Okay. Now, if they go work in a private practice, it depends. A lot of private practices, you might have to work there a year to be eligible for any benefits. Some private practices, the staff get benefits, but the doctors don't, or the providers don't. So it's kind of a mixed bag when you go work in a private practice. The other thing is sometimes when you go work at a private practice, you may not be an employee. You may be a independent contractor, 1099. And so then not only do you not get benefits, but you are going to be responsible for your full Social Security. And so, it just depends on, but, we help them review kind of the pros and cons of those different arrangements, help them create a budget once we know roughly what their take-home pay is going to be each month. And then from there, we start making some recommendations on, what they should perhaps do with their student loans. Interest rates are super, super low right now for refinancing federal student loans. Like I said, the average student graduating this year is probably going to have student loan interest rate of around 6.5%. And I was just visiting with one of my clients this morning. We were talking about he and his wife met out of school a couple years now, but they're going to refinance little over 400,000 of student. They each have 400,000 in student loans, and they're looking at refinancing that at about 2.4%. So significant savings. If interest accrual gets turned back on May 1st and they end the COVID forbearance, now the Federal Reserve has said interest rates are going up this year. So I'm encouraging folks that have the wherewithal, the means to look at refinancing at least a portion of their federal student loans if it's appropriate within their budget, because I think 2 or 3 years from now, we having a conversation about good decisions, bad decisions. I think if you can lock in a repayment schedule at anything 3% or less, that's going to probably look like a pretty good decision. But
what would be the downside?
Well, the downside is that so they have extended this COVID forbearance has been extended. They were originally supposed to turn interest rates back on last fall. Then they extended it through the end of the year. Then they said the last time we're going to do it is February 1st. The Department Secretary of Education said this is the absolute last time. We're not extending it behind February 1st. And then they announced they're extending it to May again. So the theory is well, and we had this conversation this morning with my client, well, what if they extend the zero interest rates beyond May 1st? I said, well, that is a possibility. Nobody has a crystal ball, but I just wrote an article called Don't Let the Tail Wag the Dog. And so the idea is that you've got zero interest rates perhaps for the next 2, 3, maybe 4 months, but you're going to be making payments. In this case, it was a 15-year refinance. I said, so don't let a few months of zero interest rates get you tied up to where you can't make a great decision to lock in a 2.4% rate for the next 15 years. Because I said, if the Federal Reserve is raising interest rates this year and you hold off 6 months, and now we're having a conversation about you refinancing at 2.7% or 2.8%, for 15 years, that 40 basis point difference over 15 years is going to be a lot more money than if we just locked in March at 2.4.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I concur.
So again, we don't have a crystal ball, but I don't. My view is if you can get money at 2.4%, you can do a lot of cool things with that money over the next 15 years.
Gotcha. So I see they're like, well, it's zero right now, Mark.
Yeah.
But this is an unusual environment. This is not the new the new normal. If I hear that one more time, we are in an unusual environment. I mean, there's asset classes for sneakers. It's nuts.
Yes.
If free money is not free. Is there anybody who, I don't know, somebody told me this the other day. I don't know why I stuck with it. They're like, well, student loans could be forgiven. And I was like, and so is there some sort of theory running around that Washington or Congress or the White House could go forgive their loans?
Well, there are advocates for that. I mean, Elizabeth Warren,
advocates for everything.
Yeah, ran for president. Well, she ran for president, and so
she's smart lady.
And she's advocated for that. There is a small group that's advocating for forgiveness, and they have forgiven some. So since President Biden was elected, they ran a search of all federal student loan borrowers that were also receiving Social Security disability payments, right? So they cross-referenced that list, and they forgave all of their federal loans. So that's just happened in the last year. And there is
slippery slope.
Yeah. So there is what's called public service loan forgiveness. That's if you go work in a public health clinic that meets certain criteria for 10 years, you make 120 payments. So over a 10-year period of time, whatever's left at the end is forgiven tax-free. So there's a precedent for student loan forgiveness, but it's generally linked to some type of benevolent service, right? Going into the military, working in a public health clinic, going to work at a Native American reservation for 3 years or something like that. It's required some benevolent service on their part.
Right. And as a taxpayer, I'm for that. Right? That makes sense to me. Just forgiving all of this debt. As a taxpayer, I'm puzzled.
Well, there's a whole list of things we could talk about. I mean, I'm a veteran. Should they forgive my service? Thank you for paying for my service with your tax dollars.
My pleasure.
You probably weren't. I'm older than you. You might have not even been working. I have to thank your parents. You might have not have been working when I was in the military.
Lots of oil, Volay.
Okay.
I'm actually 80.
All right. Okay. You look great. but anyway, you've got a face for radio, right?
John Ray's always telling me that.
So no, but when you start talking about forgiveness, you can make all kinds of arguments about different groups of people that are deserving. But my contention is that 6.5% interest rate on federal student loans when interest rates have been, the 10-year Treasury just went over 2% for the first time in a couple years, right? So I think the federal government personally has been kind of gouging students a little bit. Now, you go out and take a look. If you're going to give somebody $500,000 and they don't have any collateral to put up, if you walked into a bank, they'd laugh at you. So there's a whole conversation that needs to happen around student loans and education. And, can anybody sign up and get them? And, I would have never made it through dental school. I just don't have the study skills to do that. And it might have taken me a couple years and a couple $100,000 of loans to figure that out. Then what do you do with the person that couldn't get through? And so, do the schools have there's unlimited funds. So you can pretty much get whatever you need from the federal government to go to school. If you can't get that, you can tap into your parents' 401k plan. They'd love that.
I told my kids, tough luck. I tell them they're younger. I heard you said something before that made me like you immediately about how you teach finance to your children at a very young age. I caught that and I was like, yeah, I like that. I'm not going to repeat it here. So one day we'll do behind the scenes dental business radio and I'll tell that story. But for right now, so both of us teach our kids at a young age. And I told my kids, if they don't work their ass off, they will not be going to college, and that they can, serve me my Starbucks when I go through the line.
Well, work, there's a lot of great things are accomplished through hard work. There's no question about that. But hard work alone, as these schools continue to, if we're talking about going to dental school, your kids are going to have to start working pretty hard, pretty early to cover a $500,000 nut to get through dental school. So,
that's insane. So has there been any study on like how much, is there a correlation between being able, Uncle Sam giving out basically free money for your housing and all this other stuff? I'm assuming they have some criteria, and the tuition rates?
I don't know of any study. What I do know is that the schools have absolutely no incentive to keep their prices from rising. Okay. If you said you visited some dental schools, and when you go on there, all you see is cranes. There's just construction everywhere on every campus, not just dental schools, but universities in general, because there's no requirement for them to, the federal government is there handing out money to go to school. It's virtually unlimited. Okay. And so, if you're a business owner, it's supply and demand. You've got unlimited supply, which creates a tremendous amount of demand. And so, I don't know if there's a shortage in certain pockets around the country of dentists. And so, to get as many of them out into the community is fantastic. But over time, if they just keep adding on to schools and larger and larger and larger and larger classes, it's going to be very, very difficult for dentists to make the type of money they can make now, unless they're willing to go out into rural communities where there is a shortage of dentists, as I understand it. My clients that are in the rural communities, can make a great living and own multiple practices in smaller towns. I've got clients that are the only dentist, within 20 or 30 miles.
Me too.
And, some of my clients sign a no compete when they go work in a larger city, and they can't go work at a dental office within 2 miles or 5 miles of where their first job is, because there's so much saturation in some of the larger communities. So, it's the student loans thing. What we just really try to do is we want to help them, put together a plan that's going to make sense for their career path. If they want to go into, be a practice owner one day, kind of where they are in their personal life. A lot of them are going to have been putting off starting a family, getting married until they, get out of dental school. And so there's a lot of pent up consumer spending that they haven't been able to do while they've been in school, for 8 years. And so oftentimes, they're ready to buy a house, they need to upgrade their transportation, and they got this mountain of student loan debt. So kind of sorting through all of that and figuring out the priorities is really, I think, it's not rocket science necessarily, but it's one of the services I think I feel the most proud of that we provide, is just to kind of help them think through, okay, we just graduated from dental school. I've got my first employment agreement. I'm going to be making $150,000. I really want to buy a house, but does it make sense to buy a house right out of school? Or should I wait and make sure, is this first job going to be the one? Am I going to be here for a while? Because I think I've seen a statistic, 15 or 20% of first year dentists, leave their job after the first year. And so, if you're getting a job and then for whatever reason, it doesn't work out 6 to 12 months after your contract, expires, do you really want to, buy a house? And so I just say, try to be patient with some of this consumer debt. Don't buy a house right out of school. Don't sign that $700 a month Audi lease. You'll be able to pay cash for it in a few years if you're smart. And, once you sign a lease on a brand new car, it's hard to break that habit and be comfortable buying a used car with 60,000 miles on it. They kind of get you hooked, and then you're feeling like you're having to drive a brand new car all the time. And so some of that consumer culture that we're in, does not help at all in becoming a practice owner, and it doesn't help paying down your student loan debt. So we try to, again, this is wisdom of the ages, but seems like it's not the culture today. It's a spend culture. So we try to share that information with them, and then go through the different federal repayment programs, income driven repayment, the standard repayments, and just try to make sure to get them on the right program.
I like it. I think that this is a very noble service. It's really not done a whole lot. I'm sure that there's plenty of tools out there for people, docs in particular. And for some reason, it's just not something that's talked about. I mean, I can't tell you how many clients, very successful clients, I know over the years that essentially are running their business the same way that the household is run, check to check, and it puzzles me.
Well, again,
I mean,
cultural thing, we don't teach a whole lot of finance, and unless you go on and get a finance degree, you might have to take some personal finance class in high school, maybe in 11th grade or something. It's how to balance a checkbook, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And, so money is not a topic that, is generally taught in our society, unless you really have to seek it out. And, like you said, there are tools out there, that people can jump on. There's online stuff, but, I could watch a YouTube video on how to clean my teeth. I probably don't need to go to my dentist every 6 months, but I still see the value of still see the value of going and visiting with a professional.
I'm Googling that. I want to see
at 53, I don't have a cavity, so it seems like it was the right decision to go visit my dentist every 6 months. But
well, I think that there's something to be said always about having professionals. I mean, I could YouTube on how to, wax my car. I'm not going to wax my car, but I'm also not going to do my own taxes, and I'm not going to write my own contracts, be my own lawyer either. Right. I'm not going to be my own dentist. I'm not, as a business owner myself, I cannot be an expert in everything. I just need to be really good at what I'm good at. And then I need to go find the smartest people out there to help me in areas that they're smart with. I mean, John Ray's the exception to the rule, but, he told me he was an expert at being a show producer. But, he's got his gifts over there. But that's what I do. I want to go hire the best people about it. And sometimes we need prodding. I think that there's coaching that has to be done. And even, I mean, I'll tell you, made a lot of money early in my life, and nobody really taught me about money either. And so guess how I learned it? The hard way. One day the music stopped, and I'm like, where's all the money? Well, we had a really good time, me and my wife, for several years. And I'm like, well, we have lots of money. Not so much. And so, luckily, when I learn things, I try not to make the same mistake twice. So, that's where, but when I have children, and, I think for those of everybody, not that I don't want to think of my listeners as my kids, but for my kids anyway, I try to teach them the things that I try to say, look, you don't have to take the punch in the face here in order to duck. Like, I know this punch is coming, so just learn to duck if you'll listen. And finance and understanding money and prioritizing your money and the compounding power of money over time, and how effective simple savings are, and financial freedom. These are simple things, but you don't have to learn it the hard way. And a lot of times you need somebody to coach you on that at the very least.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really all we are. I mean, the stuff is not rocket science, but having someone to coach you and encourage you, and, most households, I would say 80% of American households, maybe higher, don't have a written budget. A couple doesn't sit down and say, here's our income, here's our expenses. How much do we want to spend next year on vacation? How much do we want to spend next year on the holidays? In St. Louis, probably about every 20 years, you got to put a new roof on your house. Okay. And, we got a new roof 8 years ago. So in 12 years, we're going to have to come up with 20 grand to put a new roof on this house. Right. And so are we setting money aside for that? Or where's that 20 grand going to come from? Maybe it's going to be 25 grand 12 years from now. And so where does that money come from? And so if what I really want to do is I want people to understand that, we want to help you put together a budget. We want to help you put together, the word budget is, people don't like that, but that's what it is. You plan, a budget, whatever you want to call it. We want to help you put together a plan so that there's going to always be curveballs that life throws at you, right? People lose jobs. Global pandemics happen every 100 years or so. Sometimes there's health issues that happen. And, so life throws curveballs. And yeah, there's going to be some that you're not going to be able to duck. Okay. But when you get hit in the face, do you have resources set aside? Do you have have you built a professional team around you that can come alongside you and help you get back on your feet? Or even train you on how to hit at a few curveballs. And so, that's what we try to do, is to do our very best to prepare you for the future. And, one little anecdote was, prior to COVID, one of the first things I try to do in a budget is help them save 3 months of living expenses. And so I used to get a lot of pushback on that because, interest rates have been so low, and they're like, well, why should I have $15,000 sitting in a savings account earning, 1% or less? And I said, well, I don't know. But at some point, there's going to be an emergency, and you're going to want to be able to get into some cold, hard cash, and you don't have to worry about selling a stock that might be down or whatever. So we have different buckets of money for different things, right? You don't use a Phillips screwdriver for where a regular screwdriver works, and vice versa. And I said, this money is not intended to grow. It's not intended to be profitable. It's just there, cold, hard cash. And so I get a little pushback on that, but fortunately, most of them listened. Okay. I had obviously no idea that most dental offices were going to be closed down for 2 to 3 months because of a global pandemic. And having those resources set aside, now I didn't, just kind of worked out that way. It's been a great story now, because I tell people, don't worry about, if you've got 3 months, and now the ultimate goal is to get to 6 months but that first hurdle of getting 3 months of living expenses put away, most dental professionals are, if they lose their job, they're going to be able to scramble and find income within, a 90-day period of time, even if they have to get couple part-time jobs. And so we just want to do our best to help them build a plan that's going to, it's not going to be perfect. It's going to be evolving over time, but get them in the best financial position possible to address that. Like we talked about earlier, that first big financial decision is, how do I pay off these student loans? That's going to be their first decision once they graduate, first big decision. And we want to make sure that they don't spend 2 or 3 years on the wrong plan. And that happens. We have probably about 10 or 15% of our business I call redos, which are people that graduated. They didn't seek help from a professional figuring out a plan for their student loans. They, maybe they watched some person on YouTube, or they listened to a school friend or somebody that wasn't qualified.
They read it on Facebook or whatever cool stuff. It's not, Facebook's not cool anymore. I don't know. Never been my thing anyway. Yeah, I mean, the stock is way down in the last few weeks here, so it's not as cool as it once was, I guess. But anyway, they got advice. They got it from somewhere, from an unqualified party, and about 10% of our new clients come in and they were on the wrong plan for a couple of years, and in some cases it cost them thousands of dollars because they didn't know what they didn't know. So we offer a free 30-minute consult, and no obligation, and we're just here to help people make the best of their, they've spent 8 years going to dental school, well, 4 years undergrad, 4 years of dental school. Maybe they went on to residency. They spent a big chunk of their life going to school. They got this mountain of student loan debt. We want to help put them in the best position to pay that off and to reach their career and personal financial goals. I think that's very honorable, and I like the way that you put it, that this is your first big decision, and you get into running your own business. And it is not like there's not other business challenges to await you, or life challenges for that matter, as somebody who's also married and has children. This is it's a put on your big boy and your big girl pants. I didn't want to do the budget either, but I really wish I had somebody like you when I was, younger to say, look, here's what you need to do. And instead of looking at it as work, you got to look at it as stepstones to financial freedom, because you don't want to be a prisoner to your own financial debt, and you don't want to be in indentured servitude either, or be forced to make decisions. Like if you don't have the 3 months of savings, is a very good example, actually, because like, what if you're scrambling? Maybe you can scramble, but should you need to scramble? Like, why do you not want to scramble? Maybe you need to take some time off, or maybe you want to move to another city, or who knows? And
50% of new dental students, over 50% are women. And so they might have a time in their life where they want to take off, some time for maternity leave, that's just an example that came up recently with one of my clients. And, we've already got 3 months of living expense saved up because that's our emergency savings. And now, we're putting a little bit more money aside. So she's going to be able to take off time, spend time with the baby, and not have to be stressed out about, I got to get back to work as soon as possible because two-income household, I can't afford to be off work. Well, that decision, she doesn't have to worry about that. The couple doesn't have to worry about that because they've already prepared in advance for it.
Right. It feels good. It's freedom. That's real freedom to me.
Absolutely.
So John Ray, he feels free too. Whenever he gets pregnant, he wants to be able to take off and enjoy his time. So I like what you're doing. And I don't think I've heard many other people. I'll be frank with you, I haven't heard anybody else go this route. Now, what's time sensitive as far as this, what's going down in April? So just real briefly, right, for our listeners, break it down and say, here's what your decision needs to be, or what you're facing, and then how do they reach you?
Sure. So between now and May 1st, if they've graduated in the last couple of years, especially 2020, 2021, they haven't had anything to do with their student loans. So that's just been on hold. So they're going to have to make a decision that they're going to have to pick a plan to get on. If they don't do anything, it's going to default to a 10-year repayment. And so if you've got $400,000 of student loans and it defaults to the standard 10-year payment, that's like $4,000 a month. So you'll get that letter in the mail. So there's several different options. They could enroll in an income-driven repayment plan. There's 4 different plans. We can help them figure out which one would be the best for them. They could consider refinancing with a private lender. We coach our clients on, which provider might be the best for them, given there's about a dozen or so big lenders out there that just focus on refinancing student loans. And then for those graduates coming up, 2022 graduates that will be graduating in May or June from either dental school or residency, typically they have a 6-month grace period where they don't have to do anything with their student loans. But again, if interest gets turned back on May 1st, that means 6 more months of interest. So if you have $300,000 in student loan debt, that's $9,000 of interest that's growing. And so the bottom line is have a plan between, work on developing a plan for your student loans between now and May 1st. And they can contact us by going to our website, StudentLoansRx.com. That's StudentLoansRx.com. Or they can give me a call at 314-737-8123. 314-737-8123. We do offer a free 30-minute consultation, no obligation. If they want a free consult, they go to the website, again, StudentLoansRx. Just click on the button, green button, says free consult. Takes 2 minutes. We have a couple of questions they fill out. Takes less than 2 minutes to fill that out. They hit the submit button, and then we'll schedule a time that's convenient for them we'll do a 30-minute Zoom consultation and talk about the different options that they have for repayment.
I think that's awesome. Thank you, Mark Johnson. Our listeners, thank you as well. John Ray's making puzzled looks over there, and I would like to explain something to John Ray. John Ray, see, interest, when you're paying interest, when you have a big chunk of money, the more money that's out there and the more interest you're paying on it, the more you're actually going to pay over time. So you want to reduce the amount that you owe, and then you will pay less interest. I know that you were wondering about that. So for you and all of your other cousins out there, this is your host, Patrick O'Rourke. I'd also like to thank our sponsor, Practice Quotient, PPO analysis, negotiation, and strategic guidance. Professionals, certified, and very, very good at what they do. www.practicequotient.com. This is your host, Patrick O'Rourke. Thank you, Mark Johnson, all the way from St. Louis. Did you root for the Rams or not?
No, we did not root for the Rams, but thank you for having me on.
My pleasure. Thank you very much. Thank you, John Ray. You know I love you. And with that, until next time.